What's up, guys? Welcome back to my YouTube channel and welcome to my husband Jared, who's joining us again for a video today. I feel like it's been a little while since we've done a video together, but it was only like 4 videos ago that we did our like marriage conversation. It just feels like we filmed that so long ago that we wanted to sit down, have a little bit of homemade pizza together. So we're gonna be doing a little bit of a mukbang with you guys. It's also been a really long time since we've done that. And just answer a couple of questions that you guys sent through.
Can you call 2 pieces of pizza a mukbang?
We have 2 whole pizzas. This is the only.
We already ate some
this
of
is
it.
only the food that's on the plate right now. I have not eaten pizza.
I already
yet.
had 3 slices.
You're kidding. We have a couple of questions that you guys sent through on Instagram. I asked you to ask me questions that we had never answered before. So they should be a little bit newer, things that we haven't necessarily addressed on the channel. So we're gonna get into all of that in this video. While I'm pulling up these questions, do you have any life updates for the fans, for the world? What's new in Jared's world?
I can't think of what I was doing last time I did one of these. We're trying to buy a house right now, and so
You're owning like all of that process.
The way that we break, I was gonna say, the way that we break that down between the two of us is Beth does a lot of the day-to-day finances, because some of those like repetitive bills that we pay on a regular basis just stresses me out and kind of gets me like really worked up. And but when it comes to big picture stuff, I'm a lot better at that and smoother at doing those things. So I'm kind of working with our mortgage broker and a real estate agent right now to find what is a reasonable house for us in our price range in this market. It's very expensive to own property here, so we're just trying to, you know, pull all the strings and do all the little tricks and stuff to be able to get into something again.
It's good. It's a good life update. I honestly feel like so many of these questions are directed at Jared, so you're going to be doing a lot of the talking, and we'll go back and forth with each other on these things. But where do we want to start? I feel like that is a good segue into one of these questions, because it's how did you go about saving for a house? And so I think we could probably start with what we did for this one, since like we had to save for a house to get into this one. We had quite a bit of debt when we first got married, and so we had to really tackle a lot of that first. We used a lot of the like Dave Ramsey principles of like the snowball method of like paying off that I think it's the smallest amounts first to just kind of like knock them off, and then you go to the highest ones after that. And we did that for like a couple of years, and then obviously God showed up in a lot of really cool ways as well to help us pay that off. But how would you say that we like saved for the house?
I think like the first things first is we can't take credit for where we are financially. Like God actually has done a lot of really cool stuff in our life and opened some pretty big doors, like randomly, some real miracles in our financial story. So I just want to preface all that stuff with that. But I would say that when you are trying to save, you need to know what you're saving for and towards. You need to have your goal in mind. So initially our goal was paying off debt, but even the bigger goal behind that was we're paying off debt so that we can buy a house. And the bigger goal behind that was to have a place to live with our family as we were going to build a family. And so just know what you're saving towards, break that down in steps backwards, and then make a plan and then be disciplined in that. And a lot of times the 2 areas where it breaks down are the 2 main areas, which is know what you're saving for beyond just like I want this shirt or I want this car. What's your why behind it, and then what's your plan towards getting there. And those are the 2 areas where people will have a really strong why and not a good plan, or a really great plan but they don't have anything to save for, and then they just save up all this money and they just spend it on like random stuff.
And you have to be a team in it as well, because it's one thing for like one person to have that plan and that goal and that dream, but if you both like aren't aligned in that and the other one is just like,
you're screwed.
I have food on my face. I was like, I'm for sure gonna have food on my face. Yeah, if the other person is just like just gunning through all of the savings and buying whatever, and you're not on the same team, or you both don't see value in it, then you're not gonna get where you want to go.
Or you're saving and you're just always like in conflict because you're saving.
Yeah, and so you just have to like agree to what the goal is, and then both be on board with doing that together.
Yeah.
If you could buy anything and money wasn't a factor, what would you buy? A house. Probably like
a big house.
If it wasn't like a factor at all, I think I would probably do like a custom build, not farmhouse, but like house with a lot of land around it that we could potentially even have a farm on, and just like lots of room for kids, like potentially even room for animals and like hobby farm type stuff. Just like lots of space for people to come and be hosted by us, and like just room and land. That's what I would say.
Also, don't eat my crust, so if you got a problem with that, I don't know.
I have a problem with
care.
that. Ooh, what's our pet peeve about each other? You go first.
I mean, the cleaning thing is like a recent one.
The cleaning thing.
Beth will just like clean everything up while I'm still using it, which is like really frustrating. I'll turn around like in the kitchen in the middle of making dinner, like cut something with a knife, and the knife is like in the dishwasher, and I've got to go do it. I was literally making the dough for this pizza tonight, and she put all of my like measuring stuff into the dishwasher before I was finished like measuring everything out. So that's frustrating.
Oh, you got more.
I don't think so. That was just so like available. Oh, the other pet peeve is that you don't like warm fruit, which I think is whack. Like,
I don't like warm fruit. It's
I'm
not
not talking just like putting strawberries in the microwave. I'm talking about like desserts, like pies and like
there are certain pies that I
apple
will eat.
crumbles and stuff.
Here's my stipulation with warm fruit and desserts. It has to be small and like finely ground. Like I will have blueberry pie because those blueberries are like very small and finely ground, but like apple pie to me with those like big thick slices, fruit to me when it's warm like that just gets rubbery.
Slices.
How many times can you say that?
As many times as it's like
It's enough
pertinent
slices.
to the conversation. It's enough slices, that's what it is. Not too many.
Yeah, there's just like I can't do warm fruit in certain contexts, especially like I have done pineapple on pizza before, but I am of the mind that pineapple does not belong on pizza, and he's of the mind that it is.
It's fine. If you like it, you like it.
Okay, my pet peeve about you is one that you are very aware of. It's the fact that Jared will accomplish tasks to like a certain percentage of completion and then just stop the task entirely. Yeah, like you'll clean the kitchen and you'll clean it till it's like 75% clean, and I'll get down there and it's like you've done everything except the counters have not been wiped. There's crumbs everywhere. Like there's a couple of things still in the sink because he just decided he didn't want to finish washing them. That is like I think my pet peeve, but
yeah, I don't know why I do that.
It's okay. I still love you.
Thanks.
Okay, this is kind of similar. What's your love language? I feel like I don't even know what your love language is right now because it changes all the time. Physical touch.
Right now, it's just friggin' time to be alone by myself.
Good. Maybe acts of service would be your love language then? Like taking care of things for you, or like purposefully leaving you alone as an act of service for a little while? Like taking the baby so you can have quiet time or something like that.
Yep. What about you?
Words of affirmation, and then I don't know if it would be quality time or gifts because I kind of waffle back and forth. I feel like we're both pretty independent, but then eventually we both will reach a point where it's like, okay, we need to spend time together. But I do appreciate a romantic gesture like flowers, or like if you see something that like reminds you of me that you get or whatever. Next question. What is the biggest fight we've ever had?
I mean, probably the one last Friday. That was a pretty big one. Yeah, basically we were arguing about all kinds of stuff. Like pick a thing, we were arguing about it. She said a bunch of stuff, I said a bunch of stuff. But at the bottom of it, we just hadn't really been spending a lot of like intentional time together, focused time together. Yeah. We were spending a lot of time together, just not focused and intentional. So that was long. And what made it worse is she kept having like appointments in the day. So we started arguing at like 8 a.m. and then she'd have like an appointment.
I would leave for like 2 hours.
And then come back and we'd argue for like another hour, and then she'd leave again for another hour, and then come back and we'd argue for an hour. So we didn't finish it until like 9 p.m.
It was such a long day.
It was exhausting. It was terrible. I'm never going to do that again. I don't think either of us realized how much we were each like desiring that. Without knowing it, yeah.
But other than that, I feel like our other biggest fight was in like the first month that we got married, and it was about cleaning. It was like because I was cleaning too much and I thought he wasn't cleaning enough, and I was like, how the heck can you be mad that like your wife is cleaning too much? But you just like weren't used to having like
tell me how you're gonna describe this. You weren't used to being clean as a person in our house.
I was gonna say you weren't used to like the level of cleanliness that I grew up with, that I automatically brought into our home, because typically you just do whatever you do when you were like
but you make that sound like I should be used to it, as if that's like a normal level of cleanliness. It's not
much higher than the normal level of cleanliness. But we needed to find like a middle ground and where we were gonna go, like moving on.
Because I was not, like, I will admit, I wasn't like I would probably be like, if you're at like 100% of cleanliness and the whole world exists around like 75, I was probably at like 60. Like, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't I wasn't leaving dishes in the sink for a week or anything like that, but I was also like
not washing your bedding until
often. I wasn't washing it often. I was washing it.
Okay, this one is specifically about Vivian, but it's how is it going with like the straws and open cup training with Vivian. This is very specific to like parenting. So we're giving her water out of an open cup during her meals, and that's like how she drinks her water. It's going well, but she doesn't like pick it up and hold it on her own. So like right now I'm still holding it for her. If I give it to her, which I have done a couple times, and I'll just put like a little bit of water in the cup, immediately she just dumps it on herself. So we're easing into that. I have to like have her totally shirtless and just let her practice with like little bits at a time, but she is really good at drinking out of the open cup. I got her a cup with a straw a couple weeks back from a Canadian brand called Mommy's Ark, and she like the first time I gave her the cup, drank water out of the straw like she had never not done anything else. Like she drank it perfectly, and then it was like a moment later she just totally forgot how to do it.
Started like chopping on.
Yeah, I just started using the straw as it's like a teether, and so I don't know how to correct that now. I don't know how to like get her out of that mindset, but she was really good at it and then kind of reverted, so we're still working on that.
Yeah.
Okay, this one's for you. As a homeschooled kid, would you say that you were easy or difficult for your parents to teach?
Easy. I was wicked smart.
Oh my gosh.
When I was a kid, literally my mom told me this like 2 weeks ago, because we were looking at like old home videos where I was doing like some stuff, or like old photos, and she said like, oh, you are so easy to teach. I would literally just show you something and then you would understand it, and then we would move on and you would just know that thing. So, and that was like when I was really young, like flashcards and stuff like that, like how to read and how to like write. So it wasn't like I'm a genius or anything like that, because obviously that gapped out somewhere, but as a young kid, I was pretty absorbent of everything and fairly easy to teach.
I feel like you are still now though, because even when I was in university, like stuff in my program that I wouldn't understand, I would have him like learn and then teach to me, and he could do it in like 15 minutes. It was pretty crazy. I feel like homeschooling kind of facilitates that type of learning, because you almost have to teach things to yourself.
Yeah, well, my parents my dad was fairly busy with work and stuff, and then my mom did a lot of the schooling, and she just kind of tapped out on her understanding of math at like grade 5 or 6. And so
that would be me.
Between grade 6 and 11, I just had to teach myself math out of the books, which is why I wasn't great at it, but
I still went to university for math.
I didn't go for math. I went for economics,
which
had a lot of math in it.
Did you like being homeschooled?
I did until I didn't. Like, I liked it until I was basically like high school, and then we wanted me to go to school for like grade 9.
You wanted me, like your family?
Yeah. Like my family wanted me to go, and I think I kind of wanted to go, but that was the year that we moved to Thailand, and then I went for grade 11 and grade 12. So the grade 9 and grade 10, I didn't resent being homeschooled, but I had a really hard time not being a part of like a normal school.
Would you want our kids to be homeschooled?
I don't know. I mean, it's got pros and cons. We were homeschooled my whole life because I had to be. Like when we traveled around in the States, it wasn't an option to go to normal school. Maybe till like a certain grade, if I'd be open, I wouldn't homeschool through like high school, like all the way to university.
Yeah.
Certainly
I mean
not.
more like grade school and stuff like that.
Yeah, maybe up until like
it's something
grade
that we're
6 or
talking about. Like obviously I am going back to work, but if there was a scenario where I was going to be staying home longer term, it's something that we would like more seriously consider. Okay, this kind of ties into what we were just talking about, but it's, do we ever see ourselves doing missions overseas? And I feel like because Jared grew up like in a missionary family, this is something we talked about a lot when we first started dating, because I kind of felt like if I married him, like I would be living in Africa or something like that, or like the Lord was just gonna call us as a family somewhere else. And I was like, I don't know if I feel called to missions. And so that was like one of those conversations that we had to just get on the same page with. And eventually we came down to like both feeling like we were called to each other. And so if God called us to missions, that we would both feel like that, like strongly.
Right, yeah.
We would both feel like we got that calling together, like as husband and wife. And so, I don't know, like I feel like right now we feel very called to where we are, like in the city that we are, and we haven't necessarily felt like God has called us to a foreign country or anything like that. But again, like if God like tells us that he wants us to go do it, then we'll go do it. That's just kind of how we operate.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say that I have like some burning desire to move overseas and do like build
missions
church
work
or
like you did as
tell
a kid.
people about Jesus there.
There's a lot of people that need to hear about Jesus where we are right now. What's our favorite show that we've watched on Netflix together?
Together?
The last show that we watched on Netflix together is Love is Blind. And that was because I decided I wanted to watch it and I looped Jared into it. And then
here's what happened.
Into the characters.
You and my mom
people.
and my sister started watching it when I was like, I had like food poisoning and I couldn't get off the couch and I was so sick. And I was like sweating under a blanket and like shaking and stuff. And they're like, let's watch Love is Blind. And so I had to sit there and watch it. And then I got hooked after the first episode because it was season 2. And yeah, just some of the characters were just wild.
Who's your favorite couple?
Favorite as in what? Favorite as in entertaining?
Like
or
most fun to watch on Love is Blind.
Just Shane is the most fun to watch on Love is Blind. That guy's a trip.
I would agree that like the whole Shane situation and triangle was
I feel like that wrapped me, like that got me locked in.
Shake was also very entertaining to watch, but he was also infuriating to watch. So I feel like I can't say that he was my favorite. This one can kind of go together. I feel like I don't even know what my answer would be to this, but our favorite activities that we both enjoy doing together are like best date ideas. I feel like that's what I would say is we really like going to the movies. That's harder to do now that we have a baby because we can't like go to a restaurant or we could go to a restaurant and like bring her with us, but we wouldn't necessarily do that at a theater.
I try to get you to play squash with me, but you are too afraid of the ball.
This is an interesting question. How do I help serve my boyfriend more? I have a hard time finding new ways to help. I feel like just asking is a good place to start. A lot of the times you can assume that what you're doing is helpful or like impactful, but a lot of the times you're also doing what you would want done in that scenario. Like Jared mentioned, words of affirmation are pretty low on his list, but for me they're high. And so I show love and receive love by words of affirmation, but like I could write a novel to Jared about all the things I love about him and that wouldn't hit as much as like acts of service or like spending quality time together or something like that.
I'd take a novel. You're gonna write one. I'll read it.
Different. But I feel like all that to say, it is just like helpful to ask like, hey, what does it look like for me to help serve you in this season? Like, how can I best like be there for you? And then the other thing that I would say is just like pray about it, because ultimately God knows what he needs better than you know, or he actually knows himself. And so oftentimes if I'm just like at a loss or not sure what to do, I'll just like go to God with that and ask him like what he would have me do or what Jared actually needs in that scenario. And then just like be obedient to wherever God leads you in that, and you'll see the fruit of that. We have any advice for a husband with a postpartum wife? Yes, first of all, go and watch our postpartum sex 101 video, which I will link directly above here, because everything that we could say would be kind of encapsulated in that video. But we basically went over like addressing that from like a physical perspective, an emotional perspective, and all of the things that may be a little bit scary to approach when it comes to postpartum. Even like some of the postpartum hormones, like fears around sex and like discomfort and all that stuff. So we go over a lot of that in that video. But like if you were just to give really quick snapshot of advice to a husband, what would you say?
Be patient and talk a lot.
I feel like another thing that we talked a lot about in that video is like each being willing to do your individual part. So for me, it was like getting in the headspace and wanting to be able to do things physically again as soon as I could, but for Jared waiting as long as he needed to, and both of us having that approach of like, I'm in this for you and like want to see you thrive. And I think that helped us to really get through that season and just be on each other's team with it all.
Yeah, you had a good line. As long as it takes, as soon as I can.
Yeah. Okay, these next two are like hardest and best things for you. What was the hardest thing and the best thing for you about becoming a father?
The hardest thing is just kind of like the constant responsibility. Whereas before, when I was single, it was just I was only responsible for myself. Then you get married and there's like a responsibility for your spouse, but you're just like you're a grown independent person. Yeah. So that responsibility actually is not much higher than like where I was before, respectively. And then you have a child and then it's like all of your time, like as soon as I wake up in the morning, one of us has to be with her. Yeah. And get going. And that happens until like 6:30, right? Or 7. Mm-hmm. So it's just like constant. The best part though is just how much like joy Vivian brings to our life. Mm-hmm. And how great she is. Like she's just so much fun. So not been this tired or challenged in my life before, but I've also not been this happy in my life before, because there's just so much joy in having her around.
Someone asked what the hardest and the best things are about being a pastor.
The hardest thing is probably the way that people perceive you, or the way that I think people perceive me.
We're going deep.
Yeah, that'd be the hardest thing, because oftentimes I want to, like, I've always wanted to help people my whole life. Help people in general, but then also help people understand that God loves them. And the hardest thing about, quote unquote, being a pastor, like a professional Christian, or
like
whatever, like vocational, full-time
professional
building
Christian
church, is the fact that I now find it really hard to tell people things that will be helpful to them and encourage them and give them advice on stuff and challenge them without thinking that they think I'm like a know-it-all. I found that to be easier when I wasn't a pastor, when I was just another guy that was hanging out with a bunch of guys, and I was like, dude, you shouldn't do that, or like, you should do this or this or this. Now as a pastor, I feel like they just perceive me as like kind of arrogant and that stuff. That, a lot of that could be in my head too. The best thing is seeing people grow over time and being a part of that. Actually, the best thing is being like having somebody that you've really invested into and start to invest in other people and see them grow, because then it's like you see it begin to multiply. People's lives change, not just you helping people understand their life better and understand God better, but they start helping other people.
Someone asked how I learned to edit my videos. So couple things. I already knew how to use the Adobe Creative Suite, which is what I use for like all of my digital marketing stuff. I use Adobe Premiere Pro to edit my videos, and I have a lot of friends that are freelance video editors. So for the first couple of times that I was editing, I had one of my friends like basically on speed dial, and I would call her every time I got stuck, and she was like, yes, such a legend in helping me figure that stuff out. And then after that point, when I got more comfortable with it, I would basically just like YouTube something if I was in a point where I like couldn't figure out what to do anymore. I was just like shuffling the crust on the plane. It's on camera.
Sorry. So sorry.
I would just look for stuff on YouTube and figure out how to do things quickly, and so now it's like pretty quick for me to do. Tips for prioritizing marriage as new parents. I feel like we are very much still learning all of this, so we are by no means experts. Like a lot of this is what our like big conversation
we were fighting about last week, so
was.
I don't know if we're in a place to give tips on
about last week, but I feel like for us at the end of the day, it was just like the tip is like we have to do it. Like it wasn't like
it was less of not knowing what to do. It was more of just not realizing we weren't doing the thing that we knew we should do. And basically, like if you want to prioritize your marriage, like the way that you know you're prioritizing something is where you're spending your money and where you're spending your time.
Yeah.
So we weren't really spending our time with each other.
Yeah.
Or our finances.
Or our money. Like we hadn't like done very well in the last little bit at like going on dates, and we used to do these quarterly getaways before we became parents. We used to do getaways together, and like it had been such a long time since we had done any of that, and so at the end of that conversation we basically just made a game plan of like what is it going to look like for us now to prioritize our marriage. It's also important to figure out how you can just spend that time at home and still connect and feel like you've had like an intentional date night, even if you don't go out and spend the money, which is another thing that we're going to incorporate in the next couple of weeks as well. Okay, so the last question that we'll answer is, do you get jealous of the other parenting roles / freedoms, and how do you handle those feelings?
Parenting roles? Yeah,
so like do you ever get jealous of, for example, the way that I get to spend more like one-on-one time with Vivian, or after she was born? Like I was the one that would be breastfeeding her and whatever. I think from my perspective to Jared, yes, because like sometimes when you are like the primary caregiver, it can feel like, and like this is not always the case, but most of the time it is the woman that steps into that, just like biologically by nature a lot of the time. But it feels like dad can swoop in and like be the hero of the day that like your kid likes more than you because you've been with them all day, and get like all of the best parts and none of like the crazy hard stuff, and then just like the day is done and you've kind of just been like grinding at home with all of the stuff that's unseen and developing them and like investing into them. at the end of the day and she's like smiley or happy or stuff like that, and like I've been dealing with like tears or crazy blowouts all day, and then you come home and she's just excited to see you. And so I think in those moments where I felt like even a hint of jealousy or like I wish that this was this, like almost all of the time I very quickly feel conviction from the Holy Spirit, because again, like I have prayed so much in my life to be a mom and to have a child, and even the honor to be able to be home with her for this past year and like invest that time into her. It's such a huge blessing, and I know that there are people that like never get that opportunity, or at least don't have it look the way that this looks for us right now. And so ultimately it is like a huge blessing and I wouldn't trade it, but I feel like in those moments it is really just like turning to the Holy Spirit. And then again, like if I am frustrated with you or whatever, like I think sometimes you could like ask me for help with something and I could automatically be like, I do it all the time, like why can't you just figure it out or something like that. But I think just also recognizing that like Jared doesn't spend all day with her, and so when it comes to things like feeding times and when certain things need to happen and like how to cut her foods or like what to give her to eat, just naturally you won't know that stuff a lot of the time because you're not in it as much as I am. And so just like having grace for that too and being grateful that I am able to spend that much time with her is how I kind of counterbalance that.
Today, it's been a really like full week for me in terms of conversations and people and all this stuff, and I was feeling pretty drained today and I just wanted to chill. And so Beth took Viv almost entirely between nap 1 and nap 2, and I just like went downstairs and just kind of like closed myself off for a couple hours, and I could hear you guys talking up here and playing and her giggling and you playing with her. And I was like, oh, you get to do that like every day for most of the day. And that was like, I wasn't jealous, but I was just like, wow, that must be nice. And then, so I think there is something to be said there of like, it is actually a really big privilege because the time that I get with her is that brief time in the evening. It's not that brief, it's like 3 hours, but that's the fullness of my time with her in a day, which I'm usually pretty exhausted by the end of it and I'm like, go to bed. But for you to be able to have that kind of parsed out throughout the day is really a blessing. And you get to spend a lot of time with her and see all of those moments of development.
Yeah,
her first
it's a blessing when you come home and she wants to see you and I get my break.
Yeah, so I mean, it's all about perspective. You can look at it and be like annoyed by anything, or you can look at it and be grateful for what you actually do get in that.
Well, I'm gonna wrap it up there. Thank you guys so much for sending in your questions. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure that you give it a thumbs up before you head out today, but also consider subscribing to my channel if you want to stick around for more videos like this. All sorts of videos on motherhood, marriage, lifestyle, all that fun stuff. So be sure to subscribe if you don't want to miss out on future uploads. But until my next video, I love you guys. We are praying for you guys, and we will see you soon.